On August 12, 2014, something mind-bending dropped in a PlayStation Store that would forever leave its mark on gaming history. It was called PT, short for Playable Teaser. Curious and a bit apprehensive, you decided to download it. That night, with the lights turned off and headphones snug in place, you were ready for whatever awaited you. The screen flickered to life and you stepped into a dimly lit looping hallway that felt both familiar and terrifying. As you navigated this claustrophobic space, disembodied voices crackled through the radio. You could feel an unsettling presence lurking behind the cracked bathroom door, waiting for the right moment to unleash its horror. The experience was short, maybe only 20 minutes, but it felt anything but like a demo. Instead, it was a doorway to something monumental. This was more than just a game. It was a revolution in horror storytelling that hinted at how fear could be redefined, and how immersive gaming could take storytelling to uncharted territories. And then, it was gone. Cancelled, deleted, pulled from storefronts. If you own a PS4 with PT still installed, it's a collector's item now. Not because the game is rare, but because the idea it represented is now impossible to recapture. Silent Hills wasn't just cancelled though. It was erased. But its absence echoes louder than most full releases. There's a unique kind of fascination we have with cancelled games. Not broken or mediocre ones, but games that had things just gone a little differently could have changed the industry. Games where vision outpaced infrastructure, where creative ambition met corporate hesitation, where something brilliant flickered for a moment and then went dark. It's easy to think of games as finished products, because that's what we see. But behind every Elden Ring or GTA is a graveyard of things we will never get to play. Alternate versions, cut mechanics, and entire worlds that developers dreamed up and never delivered. These aren't failures necessarily. Many were close, very close, but they now exist in a liminal space. Too real to forget and too unreal to play. And today, we are going to dig up some of these ghosts. In August 2014, something weird popped up in a PlayStation Store. A free download called PT. There was no marketing and no context. It was just this mysterious indie horror game from a fake developer no one ever heard of. People who tried it out found themselves in a single hallway. A normal looking, slightly grimy hallway that looped every time you went through a door. But it didn't stay that normal for long. Each loop brought back something stranger. A twitch of the light, a whisper from the radio, a door creaking open just a little too slowly. And then there was her. Always watching, always right there even when you couldn't see her. It was deeply unsettling and brilliant. PT didn't use loud jump scares or gore to scare you. It got under your skin with atmosphere, with the stuff you didn't see and with that creeping sense that something was just off. And the internet ate it up. People were obsessed. Forums lit up with theories and walkthroughs. Entire communities formed just to solve its weird cryptic puzzles. And then someone finally figured out how to trigger the ending. That's when everything just clicked into place. PT wasn't just a cool little indie horror demo. It was secretly a playable teaser for a new Silent Hill game. And it wasn't just any reboot. It was going to be made by Hideo Kojima, the guy behind Metal Gear Solid, and Guillermo del Toro, the Oscar-winning director of Pan's Labyrinth and The Shape of Water. Also, Norman Reedus was set to star, you know, the Walking Dead guy. It was one of those rare moments where everyone watching just stopped and went, oh wow, this could be something huge. People were already calling PT one of the scariest gaming experiences ever made, and now it looked like just the first glimpse of something even bigger. Kojima even admitted he's kind of a coward when it comes to horror, which, weirdly enough, he thought made him better at creating it. There's a certain kind of horror only people who are scared can create, he said, and it showed. The team wanted to take that anxiety and push it even further. Using the Fox engine, they aimed for something that looked almost real, something that could blur the line between game and nightmare. Del Toro teased the idea of horror that didn't just scare you, but actually messed with your head. Some people even thought that it might break the fourth wall, mess with your console or use your microphone. It was that kind of experimental. But just where things were picking up, it all fell apart. By the end of 2014, rumors started spreading that Kojima and Konami were not getting along. Kojima was still working on Metal Gear Solid 5, but things behind the scenes were tense. Earlier next year, Konami started quietly pulling his name from promotional materials. Then in April 2015, they dropped the hammer. Silent Hills was cancelled. No press conference, no graceful exit, just gone. Fans were crushed, so were the people working on it. Del Toro said at a panel, "It's not gonna happen and that breaks my greasy heart." Readers tweeted that he was super bummed and hoped it will come back around someday. And if that wasn't enough, Konami announced they would also be pulling PT from the PlayStation Store. Just deleting it. No way to download it again. Suddenly, PS4s with PT still installed became a rare collector's item, because now they were the only way to play it. People were furious. A fan petition to save Silent Hills hit almost 200,000 signatures. But it didn't matter. Konami didn't budge. Del Toro, who'd clearly had enough, summed up the whole thing in one now iconic tweet. That pretty much said it all. But even after it was gone, PT refused to die. Fans made remakes and tribute videos. Indie horror games started copying its vibe. You could feel its fingerprints all over the place, especially in Resident Evil 7, which also shifted to a first-person view and released its own teaser set in a creepy house. That wasn't a coincidence. PT showed what this kind of horror could be, and studios paid attention. Silent Hills was supposed to build on that and create something huge. Instead, it became one of the biggest what might have been stories in the industry. Kojima and Reedus would eventually work together again on Death Stranding, with Del Toro lending his face to a character. It wasn't horror, but it felt like a spiritual reunion. A quiet nod to the project they never got to finish. Meanwhile, Konami left Silent Hill untouched for years. It wasn't until 2022 that they finally announced some new titles, including a remake of Silent Hill 2. But none of them involved Kojima or the original vision behind PT. Still, the hallway lingers. The atmosphere, the tension, the way it made you second guess every step. It left a mark. And even though Konami tried to erase it, players kept it alive. Today, when someone mentions PT, you don't need to explain what it means. It's become its own kind of legend, a symbol of what horror games could be, and a reminder of how easily something amazing can slip through the cracks. When people think of Rockstar games, it's usually Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption that come to mind. Big sprawling worlds, crime, chaos and cowboys. But for a certain group of fans, there's another title that always stuck with them. Bully. Released in 2006, Bully was something different. It wasn't about pulling off heists or gunning down enemies, it was about being a teenage troublemaker at a New England boarding school. You played as Jimmy Hopkins, a scrappy, sarcastic kid with bad attitude and a weird sense of morality. The game had a sharp sense of humor, a surprising amount of heart, and this perfect balance of chaos and charm. And for years fans kept asking, when are we getting a sequel? Turns out Rockstar actually tried. They never officially announced it, but behind the scenes Bully 2 was in development. And for quite a while. The story came out years later through leaked info and a detailed report from Game Informer. Here's what we know. Not long after the original game wrapped, Rockstar's teams moved on to other things. But by around 28 or 29, Rockstar New England, formerly called Mad Dog Software, which Rockstar had just acquired, started working on a sequel. For that studio it was a big deal, a chance to prove themselves. A lot of the team had already worked on the Scholarship Edition of Bully, and they genuinely loved the game. They wanted to build on it, take what made it special and push it even further. Early ideas placed Jimmy outside the walls of Bulworth Academy. Maybe back in his hometown, or maybe staying at its stepdad's place for the summer. The setting was going to be bigger, more open, and with actual neighborhoods, houses and places to explore beyond just classrooms and dorms. Writers at Rockstar, including Dan Houser, were sketching out story beats. But the tone was meant to stay in that same sweet spot, mischievous and rebellious, not violent or criminal. Bully was always the odd one out in Rockstar's lineup, and that was the point. They wanted to keep it that way. But what really made Bully 2 stand out, at least from the inside, was the tech they were building. The team wanted every single building in the world to be enterable. You could walk into houses, sneak through windows, or even break in. They even created a dynamic glass breaking system. If you shot a BB gun at a window, it wouldn't just shatter instantly, it would crack and fracture in real time, depending on where and how hard you hit it. The first shot might make a little spider web pattern, the second might blow it out. That system was so advanced that Rockstar reused it later in Max Payne 3. And then there was grass. Sounds ridiculous, but the devs worked on a system where lawns would grow over time. You could mow them and leave visible lines in the grass. It was all part of this bigger goal, making the world feel alive and reactive, like you were a real part of it and not just running around in it. The gameplay was expanding too. Jimmy could climb trees, fences and rooftops. He could sneak out his bedroom window, lie in wait with a slingshot or rain water balloons down from a tree. The team even prototyped animations using assets from GTA 4 and Uncharted, testing how it could feel to have that kind of vertical movement and freedom. NPCs were also touched and going to be smarter. Instead of just using the old respect system from the first game, characters would actually remember what you did. Break someone's window, you might see them fixing it the next day. Mow someone's lawn, they might thank you. The world would react to you in subtle ways. And if that sounds familiar to you, it's probably because Red Dead Redemption 2 did the same thing years later and got massive praise for it. At one point, this wasn't just a prototype. Bully 2 had a working vertical slice, basically a fully playable demo section. Developers said it had 6 to 8 hours of content with a fully blocked out map, modeled buildings and daily routines for NPCs. Even a few missions were up and running. But it wasn't enough. The problem wasn't the game, it was Rockstar's priorities. The company tends to focus all its energy on one big thing at a time. And during the early 2010s, that meant Max Payne 3, GTA 5 and eventually Red Dead Redemption. Slowly but surely, people from Rockstar New England started getting pulled off Bully 2 and reassigned to help with those games. And once they were gone, they weren't coming back. Eventually, there just weren't enough people left to keep it going. The development fizzled out with no cancellation announcement. No goodbye. It just stopped. But that wasn't the end. In 2017, new life was breathed into the rumors thanks to a Twitter account called Bully2Info. It started leaking what looked like legit concept arts and assets from the game. Not just blurry screenshots. Actual high-res renders of suburban homes, character models and detailed sketches of interior layouts. Stuff that clearly matched what ex-devs had talked about years earlier. Some of the leaked assets were later confirmed as real by major gaming outlets. They came from early builds dating back to the 2000s and 2010s window when Rockstar New England was really working on the game. It was solid proof that Bully 2 had made it much further than anyone ever realized. And even now, that idea hasn't faded. Every few years, new rumors pop up. In 2019, there were whispers that development had briefly restarted, only to be shelved again. In 2021, fans thought the Game Awards might finally bring a surprise reveal. But the night came and went, with nothing. As of 2025, Rockstar still hasn't said a word. There's no confirmation, but there's also no denial. But the fans, they haven't let it go, not even close. Somewhere, maybe on a forgotten dev server or an old backup drive, Bully 2 might still exist. Half built, half dreamed. Waiting for the right moment and the right team to finally bring Jimmy Hopkins back. After the chaos of Bully, we had somewhere totally different. New setting, new genre and this time dragons. A dude in headphones swinging a sword. Scalebound was one of those games that just felt fresh the moment you saw it. An ambitious Xbox exclusive from a beloved Japanese developer, and one of the most painful cancellations in recent memory. For this one, let's go back to E3 2014. A sea of trailers, usual hype, and then something unexpected. Scalebound. A brand new title from Platinum Games and director Hideki Kamiya. That name alone got people talking. Platinum is the studio behind Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising and eventually Nier Automata. And Kamiya, he helped create Devil May Cry and Okami. So seeing him team up with Microsoft was a surprise, and a really exciting one. The reveal trailer was a hit. You had this young and cocky protagonist named Drew, headphones blasting, exploring a beautiful fantasy world. And right next to him, a massive dragon named Thuban. They fought side by side. Cinematic combos, mid-air takedowns, Drew launching off Thuban's back to finish off a giant monster. It was part fantasy and part modern edge, like if How to Train Your Dragon collided with an action anime. But it wasn't just a cool trailer. Kamiya talked about how deep the mechanics were going to be, giving commands to your dragon, riding it into battle and teaming up with friends in co-op, each with their own one. It wasn't just a hack and slash game though. It was trying to be a character action title, an RPG and a monster hunting co-op experience all at once. And at the time, Xbox really needed something like that. Exclusive games were a weak spot for the platform, especially unique ones from Japanese studios. Scalebound looked like it could fill that gap. And for a while, things seemed to be moving. There were demos. Kamiya even played the game live at Gamescom 2015, showing Drew and Thuban fight a massive crab monster. The next year at E3, there was a longer demo. Combat, exploration and bits of the story. It wasn't vaporwave. It looked real. But behind the scenes, things were starting to get messy. First came the delays. The game, originally slated for 2016, was pushed back into 2017. Then, out of nowhere, in January 2017, Microsoft announced it was cancelled. Just like that. Gone. Fans were crushed. It looked so far along. There were trailers, playable builds. It felt like it was really going to happen. Forbes magazine called it a crushing disappointment. And honestly, that was the general mood. And it wasn't just Scalebound. Fable Legends had just been cancelled too. It added to the growing feeling that Xbox was struggling to lock down its big exclusives. Over time, more details came out. Kamiya, who's usually blunt and kind of combative online, surprised a lot of people by apologizing. He admitted that Platinum Games was just not ready. They were used to making tight, fast-paced single-player action games, not massive online RPGs with co-op, big environments and tons of back-end systems. They also had to use the Unreal Engine instead of their usual in-house tools, which made things even harder. We didn't have the know-how to build a game like that, he said later. And the pressure just kept building. Deadlines were slipping. The scope was ballooning. It got so stressful that multiple senior developers ended up stepping away for mental health reasons. Progress slowed to a crawl. The game was behind schedule, over budget and losing momentum fast. Eventually, Microsoft made the call to cancel it. To pull the plug. Phil Spencer, head of Xbox, later acknowledged it wasn't an easy decision. Of course it wasn't. He said it was something we've all moved past. Kamiya, for his part, apologized not just to fans but to Microsoft directly. I'm sorry to the players who were looking forward to it, he said. And I'm sorry to Microsoft who put their trust in us. You don't hear that kind of honesty often. It was clear the cancellation hit hard. Not just for the fans, but for the team who'd worked on it. For Microsoft, it was a black eye during a time when they really needed wins. For Platinum Games, it was one of the few times they would stumble in such public way. And for the players, especially Xbox fans who rarely get Japanese developed exclusives, it felt like something rare had slipped away. But of course, the story didn't totally end here. In 2022, Kamiya brought up Scalebound again. Even publicly called out Phil Spencer, saying basically, hey, let's give it another shot. That one comment reignited all the old excitement. For a moment, people thought it might actually come back. But Microsoft shut it down pretty quickly. Spencer made it clear that there were no plans to revive the project. Both sides had just moved on. Still, it was obvious Kamiya hadn't. The spark was still there. And in a way, Scalebound never really died. Not completely at least. You can see small bits of it in Astral Chain, a game Platinum Games released in 2019 on the Nintendo Switch. It is smaller and more focused, but the DNA is familiar. Headphones-wearing protagonist, flashy sword combat and fighting alongside a powerful creature in sync. It's not Scalebound, but it kind of feels like the version that Platinum Games could finish. For Microsoft, the fallout from Scalebound might have shaped how they approached things going forward. They started acquiring studios, especially ones with RPG experience and stronger ties to Japanese developers. They also seem to move away from relying too heavily on outside partnerships for major exclusives. As for who was really at fault, depends on who you ask. Some fans blame Microsoft for pulling the plug too early, others blame Platinum Games for taking on more than they could handle. But Kamiya's words made clear that it wasn't just one side. Everyone made mistakes. Everyone had to learn from them. And that is what makes Scalebound one of gaming's great what-ifs. It had the right idea. Befriend a dragon, fight monsters, rock out with your headphones on. It had talent behind it. It had interest, but it wasn't the right time or setup to make it all come together. Still, people haven't forgotten it. Whenever Platinum Games announces a new game, you will see comments asking about Scalebound. Whenever Xbox reveals a big exclusive, someone brings it up again. Because sometimes even the games we don't get leave a mark. And Scalebound is one that definitely did. The thing about these cancelled games, Silent Hills, Bully 2, Scalebound and so many others, is that they weren't just unfinished products. They were flashes of something bigger. Ideas that sparked imaginations, even if they never made it across the finish line. Some had trailers, some were playable. Some had missions, characters and even full story arcs already mapped out. And yet, for one reason or another, they slipped away before we could hold them in our hands. But maybe that's exactly why they stick with us. Games are weird in that way. Unlike a book or a movie, they don't really exist until we play them. They need us to complete the loop. So when a game gets cancelled, it doesn't just stop existing. It leaves behind a kind of empty space. Like a conversation that was cut short. Like a doorway that never opened. We don't just think about what the game was. We imagine what it could have been. And honestly, sometimes that imagined version ends up even more powerful than what we might have actually played. These games remind us that for every blockbuster release there's a pile of almosts. Of near misses. Of prototypes and pitches and unfinished dreams. And they show just how tough development really is. How easily great ideas can get lost to time, to burnout, to budget cuts or corporate strategy. But there's something hopeful in that too. Because even if the game never came out, the idea can still live on. You can feel the DNA of PT in modern horror games. The systems planned for Bully 2 ended up in Red Dead Redemption 2. Scalebound's creature combat found a new life in Astral Chain. These projects may have been cancelled, but the ideas behind them didn't die. They just morphed into something else. And that's kind of beautiful, right? That even in failure, or maybe because of it, these games left a mark. Not just in code or concept art, but in the heads of the people who played their demos, watched their trailers or followed their story over the years. They are still with us, just in different forms. So we remember these games. Not just to mourn what we missed, but to celebrate what they meant. What they could have been. And how even a cancelled game can still shape the future. Because in this medium, even the ghosts are worth playing for.